Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you a double background technique for an elegant floral card featuring the Shabby Spring StampTV kit. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some ink, and the colors that I'm going to use today are Chocoal Brown, Kraft, Fresh Asparagus, and Tomato Soup. And these are all the Gina Designs colors that coordinate with the Shabby Spring StampTV kit really nicely. Then you're going to need some acrylic blocks. I have an assorted group here, and some stamps. And I'm using stamps from both the Warm Spring Wishes stamp set and the Spring Blessings stamp set. Both stamp sets come in the Shabby Spring StampTV kit. Then you're going to need a Kraft pick or paper piercer, and I'm using the Tim Holtz one. And this is just a little piece of a mouse pad that I use to cushion underneath when I use the Kraft pick. You're also going to need some brads, and I'm using some of the brushed brads from the new Shabby Spring kit. For cardstock, I have some assorted pieces here, but the colors that I'm using are the Gina Designs Ivory and also the Chocoal Brown. Then you're going to need some 1/4-inch pop dots or any kind of foam dots that you want to use, some scissors, and some adhesive. All right, I'm also going to use some of the vintage cuts for this, so if you haven't picked up any of those yet, you're going to love how easily they work with the Shabby Spring StampTV kit, and you'll see that today. So to begin, I'm going to start with 2 pieces of cardstock, and one is just a little bit smaller than the other. This one measures 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and this one measures 3 1/4 inches by 4.5 inches. So they're a 1/2 inch different all around. 1/4 inch different all around, but a 1/2 inch different in size. And if you're looking for the measurements for these cards, visit StampTV.com, find this video and look under the screen. All of the measurements are underneath the screen, and also the supply lists are there for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take a little bit of adhesive, just a little bit, and I'm going to center this smaller piece of cardstock into the large piece of cardstock. Just like that. Oops, I forgot I only have a little bit of adhesive in the center there, so you want to make sure that that looks pretty straight. And let's see here, I'll turn it this way. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. So now my next step is to get a couple stamps loaded onto these acrylic blocks. So I'm going to start with this dotted flower, and I'm going to use some of the Kraft ink with the dotted flower. And I'm going to stamp in between the 2 lines. So what I'm going to do is stamp like this, and then I'm going to put a little bit of extra pressure on it because it has to go through not just this layer but also this layer. And you can see I missed a little spot there, but that's okay. That won't be a problem. You do have to be a little bit heavy-handed with it. There we go. We'll put something else there to cover that up. There's always a way to get around a mistake. You work it in like it's meant to be there. All right, and one down here. Okay, so now I'm going to do some other ones. One in the center there, one over here, one over here, one over here. I'm going to overlap a little bit, so I got to kind of wiggle it. One maybe right here. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take this off, and now I'm going to put on this skinny little sprig. And I'm going to use the Fresh Asparagus for this skinny sprig. And I'm going to strategically place this all around those dotted flowers. We'll put one right in here. There we go. And make sure that they kind of come in from the outside so that they're going over both sections. Like that. This is such a delicate, lovely little stamp for backgrounds. I just love this one. Now you are going to be covering up the center, but I don't know, I kind of feel like I like to see it look complete, just in case there's any areas that peek out. That looks pretty good, pretty finished, I think. Okay, so now the next step is going to be to grab some of these vintage cuts. Now I have, let's see, 2 small little leafy sprigs here, and then 1 of the larger ones. So let me grab those. I don't have to stamp all these for you. I'll just put these aside. I have a couple of them done here. You can see what they look like. I'll just stamp the big one since I don't have that small stamp right here. Okay, so this is going to be fresh asparagus as well. I should put my glasses on when I'm doing this fine detail work. And I'm going to stamp that right onto that vintage cut. So there, now I have 3 of the fresh asparagus sprigs. And then I'm going to do some of the flowers. So I have a couple of little flowers here. Let me put this case back together. And this is going to be done using tomato soup. So this is going to be the small flower. And you just have to line these up. Make sure that you have them lined up and facing in the right direction. Ooh, I had some green on me here. So let me grab a finished one. That'll be for that one. Okay. So this one is going to stamp. You got to kind of look and find the right direction. There we go. Just like a die, you have to kind of find the right direction so that it matches well. And we'll add this to there. And then when this dries, it will dry up this color. Same with this, will dry up to this color. Now I'm going to grab this frame. Now this frame, you may find it's a little bit kind of, it gets out of shape a little bit because the center is cut out. And the center is cut out in case you wanted to put a little greeting in there. You could do it all at once. But the best way to make sure that this isn't out of shape when you put it on your block is just to lay the stamp with the die of the stamp or the image of the stamp facing down on your desk, and then lay the acrylic block on top, and then it'll stay in perfect shape, so you don't have to worry about as you're putting it on that you're twisting it out of shape. So this one is going to be stamped on a vintage cut plain vanilla, ivory oval, and I'm going to do that with the Chocoal Brown ink. And this one, I'm going to get it a little bit closer to me. I'm going to try to line it up. And if you don't line it up perfectly, it's okay, because you're going to put a ton of stuff on top of this. So it's going to look fine the way it is. And then we're going to do one more image. We're going to do the bird image. And again, we're going to use some of the Chocoal Brown for the bird. So I'll ink that up real well. And then stamp that onto the vintage cut. And excuse my head if it got in the way there. There we go. So now the bird is stamped along with these little images. And then I want one big flower, and I already had one that I put a brad in from another project, so I'm just going to use that. Now, the next step is going to be to layer these two pieces with some charcoal brown. And this is going to give that cool background technique where you're going to pull these back apart again. You can see you have a frame there and you have a full panel here. Let's put these together. And I have kind of a weird tape here. You might not be used to seeing this one. I ran out of my mono adhesive, which does not make me happy. And I found this one in a drawer for today's video, thank goodness. But you know I love the dot style mono adhesive the best. All right, and this one, we're going to do the same thing and get this mounted onto a charcoal brown layer. Okay, there we go. Now, the fun part of this background is to line these up and find where they originally started and line them up so that they still match the parts of the flowers that when they were originally stamped together. Isn't that cool? And that background in between, that charcoal brown background, just makes it, just gives it a whole neat look. Okay, so I'm going to tape these two panels together now. And again, I want to make sure that I'm right in the right spots. It's pretty easy to line up. You would think it would be a little more difficult, but it really isn't. It's so simple. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that fun? And you can turn it either way, whatever way you want. So I'm going to move this just a little bit over, just a hair, not much, but since I'm going to use the panel this way, I really should have kind of lined it up in the direction that I wanted to construct my card. So there we go. That's a little bit straighter. Okay, so now my next step is to add a charcoal brown panel. Now this panel is cut just a little bit bigger than the oval, and I thought that that would really make the oval kind of pop out on the card front. So you don't always have to layer an oval with an oval or a circle with a circle. You can layer an oval onto a rectangle or a circle onto a square, and it gives it a really neat matted look. All right, so I'm going to tape this piece onto this little rectangle of charcoal brown. Line that up. I have a hard time doing this if I'm not hovering right over it, but I don't want to keep getting my head in the scene. All right. And then this panel is going to go right on top, like that. So we'll do that part next. And once you see all the vintage cuts get on top, then even if your frame isn't stamped exactly perfectly in the center of that oval vintage cut, you won't even notice that because it'll be so busy. All right, so there is the main part of my card. Now I'm going to stamp a greeting, and I can actually just peel this up a little bit because I'm going to tuck that underneath, but I'm going to stamp this greeting. This is the With Love greeting. And I'm going to stamp this one with charcoal brown. I'm just going to stamp it right at the bottom of a little strip. This was just a spare strip that I had cut off of a piece of cardstock, and it happens to fit well. So I'm going to stamp that right down there at the bottom. And then with my scissors, I'll just trim that. Actually, I could trim way more than that because I just want to tuck this underneath here. So maybe I'll just pull the whole thing up. You can see this is not as powerful adhesive as my mono adhesive. And I'm just going to tuck that right under there and then put that back down. There we go. And you can also add a little bit of tape under there if you want to. It's pretty easy to do, just add a little bit. Okay. So now I have the base of my card, or my card front, and I'm going to lay out my vintage cuts. So the bird is going to go right about here, And then we'll put one little sprig of leaves here, another little sprig here. We'll put a large flower, put a small flower, put another sprig here and a small flower, and then another small flower. So that is going to be the basic layout for my vintage cuts for my focal image. Isn't that pretty? It just looks so florally, and it's really, really bright and brings your eye right into the center. But that background makes it feel like you're kind of peeking into a nature area with trees and leaves and flowers and things behind. So I'm going to use pop dots to apply all of these flowers and leaves, but I'm going to actually tape the bird right down onto the card. This way you'll have kind of multiple dimensions. So the bird will be flat and then the flowers will come out on top of that. So we'll start with, let's see, should we put one leaf down flat? Let's try that. We'll put a leaf down flat, right about here. And then we'll pop this leaf up using some pop dots. You can use 2 or you can use 1.5 if you want to conserve. I think I might do that. I'll just cut one of these in half. Put that aside. Because this is such a small little cut that it doesn't really need a whole pop dot. I'll put that one here, like that. This one can go flat. And you can see I'm just attaching part of it. I'm not attaching the free edge here. I'm just letting that kind of fly free. And then this, I'm going to use 2 pop dots, one on each side of the brad. This way that brad won't get in the way. And that one will go right here. And then I have another one already done with a brad. So I'll use that little half one on one side. And I'll grab another little one. Right about there. And that one will go right in. I don't want that to be stuck to the flower. I want them both to be stuck onto the cardstock. There we go. Okay. And then for this last one, I'll just pop that brad in using my Kraft pick and one of these little brushed brads. The brushed brads are so nice because they're not too shiny. They're a little bit more shabby and antiqued looking. They're a lot of fun to use. And I will use... Now, I've run out of pop dots, but I really haven't because all of this can be used. So you don't throw out your little leftover pieces there. All of this, I think that flew, oh, there it is. It flew right off. You can use the entire sheet. And there. So now this whole panel is going to go on top of my ivory card base right here, like that. And I will apply that with a little bit of tape. And that will center. All right, and there is my finished card project. This double background technique is fun and easy to do, and you can take it a step further by adding an even smaller layer and turning it into a triple background, perfect when you only want to add a greeting without a focal image.